The date was July 6th, 2019, a humid, heavy evening at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. A private Gulfstream G550, tail number N212JE, cut through the thick clouds, descending after a long flight from Paris. To any casual observer, it was just another billionaire returning to his kingdom. But waiting in the shadows of the tarmac was a force that Jeffrey Epstein never thought would catch up to him. As the jet's engines whined to a halt, the silence of the night was shattered by the flashing blue and red lights of federal agents. FBI and the Southern District of New York were not there for a routine inspection. They were there to dismantle a ghost. As the cabin door lowered and the silver-haired man stepped onto the pavement, the cold click of handcuffs signaled the end of a 40-year reign of secrecy and the beginning of a global earthquake. Jeffrey Epstein, the man who moved in the shadows of presidents, royalty, and tech titans, was finally in custody. This wasn't just an arrest, it was the moment the world's most dangerous secrets began to bleed into the light. Welcome to Mystery in the Dark. Today, we are launching our most ambitious investigative series to date. Over the next 5 episodes, we will peel back the layers of one of the most complex and disturbing mysteries of the 21st century. This isn't just a story about a crime, it's an exploration of how absolute power can create a fortress of invincibility. We will follow the money, the high-profile connections, and the ultimate silence that followed. From a humble math teacher to a billionaire of shadows, this is the Epstein Files Unfolded. To understand why this arrest sent shockwaves through the halls of power, you have to understand the man himself. Jeffrey Epstein was not just wealthy, he was a gatekeeper. He lived in the in-between spaces of society, where the laws of ordinary men didn't seem to apply. He had no clear source of his vast fortune, yet he owned a private island in the Caribbean, a fleet of luxury planes, and the largest private residence in all of Manhattan. He was a man who had been caught before, in 2008, but had vanished back into his life of luxury through a sweetheart deal so secretive it defied legal logic. But on that night at Teterboro, the immunity was gone. The man who knew everyone's secrets was now facing a system that had finally turned against him. As agents raided his Upper East Side mansion, they found a massive safe, hidden behind a wall of luxury and art. Inside, they found more than just cash and diamonds. They found a fake passport with a different name, but Epstein's face. He was a man prepared to vanish at any second, but he stayed. Perhaps he believed his powerful friends would save him one last time, or perhaps he knew that some secrets are so heavy, they eventually pull everyone down with them.
To truly understand the enigma of Jeffrey Epstein, we have to go back to a time before the private islands and the billion-dollar mansions. We have to go back to 1974, to the prestigious hallways of the Dalton School in Manhattan. Imagine a 21-year-old college dropout with no degree in physics or mathematics somehow landing a job teaching those very subjects at one of the most elite private schools in America. This is the first major red flag in the Epstein story. How does a man with no credentials walk into a world where only the best are allowed? At Dalton, Epstein wasn't just a teacher, he was a student of power. He spent his days observing the parents of his students, the CEOs, the high society socialites, and the political heavyweights of New York. He realized very early on that talent was common, but access was the ultimate currency. He used his charm to build bridges, to position himself not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged in their world. He was a master of mirroring, a man who could become whoever he needed to be just to get closer to the flame of influence. But the classroom couldn't hold his ambitions for long. In 1976, Epstein was suddenly fired from Dalton. The official reason was poor performance, but the timing of what happened next defies all logic. Within weeks of being fired, Epstein didn't end up looking for another teaching job. Instead, he made a miraculous leap into the heart of global finance. He was hired at Bear Stearns, one of the most aggressive and powerful investment banks on Wall Street. This jump from a failed math teacher to a high finance trader is one of the biggest mysteries of his early life. Some say he was a mathematical genius. Others believe he was a fixer even then, someone who possessed information that made him valuable to the bank's leadership. At Bear Stearns, he rose through the ranks at a speed that was almost unheard of. In just 4 years, he was promoted to limited partner. He was learning how the world's wealth was truly managed, how offshore accounts functioned, and how money could be moved through the shadows without leaving a single footprint. By 1982, Epstein felt he had learned enough from the system, so he decided to become the system. He left Bear Stearns to start his own firm, J. Epstein & Company. But this wasn't a normal business. He famously claimed that he would only take clients who were worth at least $1 billion. No millionaires, no exceptions. The question investigators are still asking today is simple. Who were these clients? For a man who claimed to manage billions, there was almost no public record of his trades, no SEC filings, and no public portfolios. It was as if his entire financial empire was built on shadows and secrets. He was building a reputation not as a brilliant investor, but as a man who could handle the most sensitive problems for the most powerful people. The math teacher was gone, and in his place, a ghost billionaire was being born. Every billionaire has a story of how they made their first million. But Jeffrey Epstein's story has a massive $80 billion hole in it. To find the source of his wealth, we have to talk about one man, Leslie Wexner, the legendary founder of L Brands and the mastermind behind Victoria's Secret. In the mid-1980s, Wexner was one of the richest and most powerful men in the world, but he was also deeply private and, according to some, very lonely. And then he met Jeffrey Epstein. The relationship that followed is perhaps the most bizarre partnership in the history of Wall Street. Within a few years of meeting, Wexner didn't just hire Epstein as a financial advisor. He gave him almost total control over his entire life. We are talking about a full power of attorney. This meant that Epstein would sign Wexner's name on checks, buy and sell his properties, and even fly his private jets without ever asking for permission. Why would a retail genius like Leslie Wexner give a man with no proven track record the keys to his multi-billion-dollar kingdom? This is where the shadow begins to grow. People who worked for Wexner at the time described Epstein as a mysterious intruder, a man who suddenly had more power than the company's own board of directors. Epstein began to move Wexner's money through complex offshore accounts, and strangely, vast amounts of wealth started flowing back toward Epstein himself. In 1995, Wexner did something that left the New York social scene in absolute shock. He transferred his massive Manhattan mansion, a 21,000 square foot palace on the Upper East Side, to Jeffrey Epstein for essentially nothing. This house was valued at over $70 million, and yet it became Epstein's primary residence. How does a financial advisor end up owning his client's most valuable real estate for free? The mystery goes even deeper. Epstein wasn't just managing Wexner's money, he was managing his image. He became the gatekeeper to Wexner's world. Some investigators believe that Epstein had found a way to make himself indispensable, perhaps by knowing things that no one else knew, or by providing services that were far outside the realm of traditional business. Even when Epstein was first investigated in 2006, Wexner's name was never far away. The private jets Epstein used, they were often registered under Wexner's companies. The homes where the misconduct took place, many were connected to Wexner's massive portfolio. Was Wexner a victim of a brilliant con artist, or was he a silent partner in the world Epstein was building? Although Wexner later claimed he cut ties, the damage was done. The math teacher from Dalton was now living in a palace funded by the empire of Victoria's Secret. The ghost had finally found his host. Deep in the turquoise waters of the United States Virgin Islands lies a 70-acre piece of land that would become the most infamous private island in history, Little St. James. To the tourists sailing past, it looked like a tropical paradise. But to those who knew the truth, it was a fortress of silence, a place where the laws of the mainland ceased to exist. Jeffrey Epstein bought this island in 1998, and he spent millions turning it into his own personal kingdom. But why does a financier need a private island with high-tech sensors and underwater cameras? As investigators later discovered, the island was designed for one thing: total control. There were guest villas, a massive library, and most mysteriously, a large blue and white striped building that looked like a temple. Local workers reported that this temple had a golden dome and strange, heavy doors, yet nobody was ever seen going inside through the main entrance. What was happening beneath the surface of this paradise? The island earned many dark nicknames over the years: Orgy Island, the Island of Sin, or Pedophile Island. Epstein's private plane, the Lolita Express, would touch down on the nearby St. Thomas Airport, and high-speed boats would ferry his guests to the private docks of Little St. James. These guests weren't just anyone. We're talking about former presidents, British royalty, and some of the world's most famous scientists. They were brought here to experience a life of absolute luxury, away from the prying eyes of the media and the reach of the law. But for the victims, the island was a nightmare with no escape. Surrounded by shark-infested waters and monitored by a private security force, there was nowhere to run. It was here, in the shadow of that strange temple, that some of the most horrific misconduct took place. The island wasn't just a home, it was a trap. A place where power was used to silence the vulnerable, and where secrets were buried deep in the Caribbean sand. As we move forward, we have to ask, who else was on that island? And why did so many powerful people keep returning to a place that felt so wrong? As Jeffrey Epstein's wealth and influence grew, so did the complexity of the world he was building. But a man like Epstein didn't operate alone. Behind the curtain of his mansions and private islands, there was a system, a machine designed to recruit and trap. At the center of this machine was a woman whose name would eventually become as infamous as his own, Ghislaine Maxwell. The daughter of a disgraced British media mogul, Maxwell was the ultimate socialite. She had the charm, the connections, and the ability to move through the highest circles of London and New York. But her real role in Epstein's life was far more disturbing. She acted as the gatekeeper. To the outside world, she was Epstein's partner, his sophisticated associate. But inside, she was the one who allegedly ran the recruitment pyramid. The system was deceptively simple. Young women, often from struggling backgrounds or looking for a way into the world of fashion and arts, were approached. They were offered jobs as masseuses or promised scholarships and career opportunities. Once they entered Epstein's world, the trap would snap shut. They were brought to the New York mansion or flown on the private jet to Florida. The environment was designed to overwhelm them. Surrounding them with luxury, expensive gifts, and the presence of world-famous celebrities, Epstein and Maxwell created a psychological cage. They were told that this was a normal part of the elite lifestyle, that this was how the world worked. But it wasn't just about recruitment. It was about expansion. These young women were often encouraged to bring in others, creating a pyramid of exploitation that grew year after year. Every mansion Epstein owned, from New Mexico to Paris, became a node in this dark network, and as the numbers grew, so did the protection. Because the machine wasn't just providing services, it was collecting information. In the world of the ultra-elite, knowledge is the ultimate weapon, and Jeffrey Epstein was slowly building an arsenal of secrets that would make him, for a very long time, untouchable.
By the early 2000s, Jeffrey Epstein was no longer just a wealthy financier. He had become a central node in a global network of power that most people can only imagine. His lifestyle was a masterclass in strategic friendship. He wasn't just meeting these people, he was hosting them. His private jets and his mansions in New York, Palm Beach, and Paris became the meeting grounds of the world's most influential figures. We are talking about former presidents, high-ranking politicians, Nobel Prize-winning scientists, and even members of the British royal family. But why? What was the magnet that pulled these powerful men toward a man with such a mysterious past? Part of it was the Epstein experience. He offered a world of absolute privacy, a place where the rules of the normal world didn't apply. But investigators began to notice a pattern. Epstein wasn't just providing luxury, he was providing access. He made himself the bridge between different worlds, connecting scientists to billionaires and politicians to celebrities. One of the most talked about connections was with Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. Their friendship, which spanned decades, became a symbol of how deep Epstein's roots went into the establishment. Photographs of them walking in Central Park or staying at each other's estates began to surface. But Prince Andrew was just one name in a directory that included hundreds of others. Names like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Bill Gates have all been linked to Epstein's circle in various ways over the years. Some claimed they were only there for the intellectual conversations or for his supposed financial genius. But as the shadows grew longer, people began to wonder, what was the cost of admission to Epstein's world? In the world of high-stakes power, nobody gives you anything for free. Was Epstein simply a social butterfly, or was he a master of leverage? Was he recording these interactions? Was he building a database of vulnerabilities? As we look back at the flight logs of the Lolita Express and the guest lists of his mansions, we realize that Epstein's true wealth wasn't in his bank account, it was in his phone book.
And as we will soon see, those connections would be the very things that kept him untouchable for a very long time. For decades, Jeffrey Epstein believed he was above the law, and for a long time, he was. But in March 2005, the first crack appeared in his carefully constructed fortress. It started with a single phone call to the Palm Beach Police Department. A worried parent reported that their child had been taken to a massive estate on the waterfront owned by a wealthy financier. The police didn't know who Jeffrey Epstein was yet, but as they began to pull on the thread, the entire sweater began to unravel. What started as a simple complaint quickly turned into a full-blown investigation. Detectives were shocked by what they found. They discovered a pattern of recruitment that mirrored a professional intelligence operation. They found a list of names and a mountain of evidence that pointed toward a dark world hidden behind the palm trees of Florida. The local police were ready to bring him down. They had the evidence, they had the testimonies. But then something strange happened. The moment the investigation reached a certain level, a shield was activated. Epstein's legal team, a dream team of the most expensive and powerful lawyers in America, descended on Florida. They didn't just defend him, they went on the offensive. Suddenly, the local police found themselves fighting a ghost. Federal authorities stepped in, and what followed remains one of the most controversial moments in legal history. Instead of a life sentence, Epstein was offered a secret deal, a non-prosecution agreement that was so favorable it felt like a reward. He would serve only 13 months in a private wing of a local jail, with work release that allowed him to go to his office for 12 hours a day. The message to the world was clear. Epstein was protected. His connections were too deep and his secrets were too dangerous to be exposed in a courtroom. The 2008 sweetheart deal was meant to bury the story forever. Epstein walked out of jail and back into his life of luxury, thinking he had won. But he had forgotten one thing. The first crack had been made, and even the strongest fortress cannot stand forever once the foundation begins to rot. As we look back at the pieces of the puzzle we have gathered so far, from the classrooms of Dalton to the private vaults of Manhattan, one thing becomes chillingly clear. Jeffrey Epstein was not just a man. He was a symptom of a much larger, much deeper infection in the world of the global elite. The arrest in 2019 was not the beginning of the story. It was the moment the world was forced to look into the mirror and see the darkness reflected back. Every flight log on the Lolita Express, every name in the Black Book, and every luxury property owned by this ghost billionaire tells a story of a world where money can buy silence and power can buy immunity. But as the steel doors of the Metropolitan Correctional Center slammed shut behind him, the clock began to tick. For the victims, it was the start of a long-awaited justice. For the public, it was the beginning of a massive awakening. But for the names in that black book, the people in the highest offices of power, it was a moment of absolute, cold-blooded panic. They knew what was in the vault. They knew what the cameras had captured, and they knew that as long as Jeffrey Epstein was alive and talking, their worlds were in danger of collapsing. This brings us to the end of our first chapter, but the mystery of Jeffrey Epstein is far from over. In fact, we have only just stepped into the hallway of this dark mansion. To understand the full scale of the horror, we must go deeper than just the life of one man. In the episodes to come, we will leave the mainland and travel to the turquoise waters of the Caribbean to see what truly happened on the island of Sin. We will follow the money trails that lead to the heart of the world's most powerful intelligence agencies. We will hear the voices of the survivors who were brave enough to break the silence. And finally, we will investigate those final mysterious hours in a high-security cell where the man who knew everything was silenced forever. As we move into Episode 2, we leave you with one final thought. In the world of shadows, the truth is rarely what it seems. Who was protecting Jeffrey Epstein for 40 years, and why did that protection suddenly vanish on a humid night in New Jersey? The answers are waiting in the dark. Stay with us. This is Mystery in the Dark.